All right, so have you ever just looked up at the sky, on like a beautiful day
Oh, yeah.
and noticed those white trails that airplanes sometimes leave behind?
It's almost like a message written across the heavens.
Yeah, exactly. It's super cool. But here's the thing.
What's that?
Some planes make them, some don't. And sometimes those trails just disappear quickly, and other times they linger and spread out like...
Like feathery clouds almost, yeah.
Yeah. So what are these trails really? And what can they tell us about, the atmosphere or even planes?
Well, that's what we're diving into today. We're going to be unpacking the science of contrails with...
Yours truly.
Yep.
Glad to be here.
Yep.
Excited to break it all down.
Yeah, so to start off, what exactly are contrails and how do they even form?
Well, let's start with the word itself, contrail. It's actually a shortened version of condensation trail.
Oh, so that's where that comes from.
It is.
Makes sense.
And that kind of gives you a clue right there. These trails are essentially clouds.
Yeah. Instead of forming naturally, they're created by airplanes.
Whoa, that's pretty wild.
Yeah.
How does that even happen?
So picture this, a jet engine roaring through the sky, spewing out hot, humid exhaust.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
Now imagine that exhaust meeting this super cold air at high altitudes.
Brah. It's hard to even imagine being up there.
Yeah, it's seriously cold up there. And when that hot exhaust collides with that frigid air, well, something amazing happens.
I'm hooked. What happens next?
The water vapor in the exhaust cools and condenses super rapidly, forming tiny water droplets or ice crystals.
So it's like the same process that makes regular clouds, except planes the ones kicking it off?
Exactly. Mother Nature and human ingenuity, collaborating on this sky-high art project.
I like that. That's a good way to put it. But what I've always wondered is, why do some planes leave contrails and others don't? Is it like a secret pilot code or something?
Uh-huh. No, not quite. It's actually more about the atmosphere than the plane itself. Think of it like baking a cake. You need the right ingredients and conditions to get it just right.
Okay, so what are the ingredients for a perfect contrail?
Well, we've already touched on the frigid temperatures way up there.
Yeah.
But you also need a certain amount of humidity.
So that's the moisture in the air.
Exactly. If the air is too dry, even at those freezing temperatures, a contrail just won't form.
So it's got to be the perfect mix of cold and moisture.
Yeah, kind of like a Goldilocks zone for contrails.
I like that. But then how come I sometimes see two planes flying at like seemingly the same altitude and one's leaving a contrail and the other one isn't?
That's where the fickleness of the atmosphere really comes into play. Even small variations in altitude or location can lead to pretty big differences in temperature and humidity. It's like kind of like microclimates, but way up in the sky.
So one plane might hit that contrail sweet spot and the other one just misses it.
Exactly. And here's another interesting thing. Some newer engines are actually so efficient that they produce less water vapor.
Wait a minute. Are you telling me that if I see a contrail, it might mean I'm looking at an older plane?
It's possible. Those new engines are like the ninjas of the sky, minimizing their vapor trails.
Whoa, that's so cool.
So those contrails that linger, they don't just hang out up there doing nothing, right?
Yeah, I was just thinking about that. I've definitely seen contrails that disappear quickly, but then others stick around for like hours sometimes and spread out.
Right. And that's where things get really interesting. Because those lingering contrails, they might actually be playing a bigger role in our planet's climate than we realize.
Whoa. Okay, hold on. So what determines whether a contrail is like a quick flash or a long-lasting show?
You remember how we talked about humidity being key for contrail formation? Well, it also plays a big role in how long they stick around.
Okay, so remind me, how does that work again?
So you've got these tiny ice crystals way up high, right? They're formed from that hot exhaust meeting the cold air.
Right.
Now, if the air up there is pretty dry, those ice crystals will actually go through a process called sublimation.
Sublimation? That sounds kind of intense.
It's actually not as dramatic as it sounds. It basically means that the ice crystals go straight from ice to water vapor. They skip the whole liquid phase. They might hang around for a few minutes, creating that cool visual, but then poof, they're gone. It's like they were never there.
Okay, so those are the short-lived contrails that disappear quickly. What about those other ones, the ones that seem to hang out forever and spread out? Those are the ones that kind of freak me out, honestly.
Those are the persistent contrails. And they form when the air is more humid.
So instead of disappearing, they just keep growing.
Exactly. Instead of sublimating away, they actually attract more and more water vapor from the air around them.
So they're like little cloud factories pumping out more and more of those wispy white trails.
That's a great way to put it. And eventually they become almost indistinguishable from natural cirrus clouds.
So they're like contrail spies blending in with the regular clouds.
Exactly. They've gone undercover. And that brings us to a really important question. Are contrails just a cool visual, or do they actually matter in the grand scheme of things?
That's what I've been wondering this whole time. They look cool, But are they doing something to the environment? Are they like messing things up?
Well, the answer is yes. They actually do play a role in Earth's temperature regulation.
Wait, really? So they're not just pretty. They're like messing with the global thermostat.
It's actually more complicated than that. They can both cool and warm the planet, just like natural clouds do.
Well, how can they do both? That seems kind of contradictory.
It all comes down to how they interact with sunlight and the Earth's heat. Thick contrails, especially the persistent ones, can act like a giant mirror in the sky. They reflect sunlight back into space before it can reach and warm the Earth.
So in that way, they're actually helping to keep things cool, like a giant sunshade.
Exactly. But here's the catch. Thin contrails, particularly those that form at night, can trap heat radiating from the Earth.
So they're like a blanket keeping the heat in.
Yeah. Kind of like a delicate blanket contributing to the greenhouse effect.
So they can be both good and bad for the planet. That's so weird.
It is. And scientists are still trying to figure out which effect wins out overall. But the current concern is that the persistent contrails, the ones that become like cirrus clouds, are more likely to trap heat than reflect sunlight.
So they might be contributing to global warming.
That's the worry, and it's why researchers are looking at ways to reduce contrail formation. Maybe using more sustainable aviation fuels, or even changing flight paths to avoid areas where contrails are more likely to form.
Wow, that's pretty amazing. So we could potentially like minimize those contrails and their impact on the climate.
Exactly, and it just shows how even something as seemingly simple as a plains trail can have these complex and significant consequences. It's a reminder of how everything is connected, you know?
Well, yes. Okay, so contrails are beautiful, but they can also be a bit of a problem for the planet. But wait, you said there was another twist to the story?
Oh, yeah, I did. It turns out contrails can actually help us understand the weather. They've become like this unexpected tool for atmospheric scientists.
Really? You're telling me those streaks in the sky can tell us something about the weather? How does that work?
Well, think about those persistent contrails, the ones that spread out and kind of look like natural cirrus clouds. By studying those human-made clouds, scientists have actually been able to learn a lot about how cirrus clouds themselves form and behave.
So they're like these accidental experiments helping us figure out the mysteries of clouds.
Exactly. And one of the most fascinating examples of this came after the grounding of planes following the 9/11 attacks.
Oh yeah, I remember that. It was so strange to look up and not see any planes in the sky for days.
Right, it was like the world just stopped. And during that time, with contrails mostly gone from the skies, scientists noticed something really interesting. The temperature difference between day and night became a lot more extreme.
Wait, really? So no contrails meant bigger temperature swings. That's crazy.
It is. And it provided more evidence that contrails, especially those persistent ones, act like a kind of blanket for the Earth.
So they're helping to regulate the planet's temperature.
Yeah. They moderate those temperature changes by trapping heat at night and reflecting sunlight during the day. It's a pretty delicate balance.
Wow. I never realized contrails were so important.
It just goes to show how even our seemingly small actions can have these ripple effects throughout the environment.
It really makes you think. So we've learned that contrails are these human-made clouds that can cool and warm the planet and can even help us understand the weather. Is there anything else we should know about them?
Well, one of the most exciting areas of research is whether we could actually use this knowledge about contrails to manage weather patterns in the future.
Whoa. Are you serious? Like we could actually control the weather using contrails?
It's definitely still in the early stages. There's a lot more research to be done and a lot of ethical and practical challenges to figure out. But it's a fascinating possibility.
That is mind-blowing.
Yeah.
So the next time I see a contrail, I'm not just going to see a white streak. I'm going to see this tiny piece of a much bigger puzzle.
Exactly. They're a reminder of how much we still have to learn about our atmosphere and how even the smallest things can have a big impact.
Well, this has been an incredible deep dive. Thank you so much for joining us and sharing your expertise.
It was my pleasure. And to all our listeners, the next time you look up and see a contrail, think about all the amazing science happening right above you.
That's a great note to end on. Thanks for listening, everyone, and we'll catch you on our next deep dive.